Nathaniel Grant moved with purpose, his polished shoes tapping steadily against the pavement of Riverside Park. The late afternoon sunlight cast long shadows through the swaying trees, but Nathaniel barely noticed. His mind was occupied with the weight of meetings, stock projections, and the ever-growing demands of running a billion-dollar empire. He had only stepped outside for a quick breath of fresh air before heading to his next engagement, a networking dinner filled with the city's most influential figures. But before he could take another step, a small tug on his sleeve made him stop. Nathaniel turned, surprised. A boy, no older than 6 or 7, stood beside him, gripping the edge of his dark wool coat with tiny fingers. His mop of chestnut hair was slightly tousled, his big hazel eyes filled with excitement. "Hey, mister," the boy chirped, his voice clear and eager. "I know you." Nathaniel blinked. He was used to people recognizing him on magazine covers, news features, and financial reports, but never from a child this young. "You do?" he asked, crouching slightly to the boy's level. His expensive watch glinted in the sunlight as he adjusted his cuff. "How's that?" The boy grinned, then fished something out of his small backpack, a crinkled, faded photograph. He held it up with both hands, showing it off like a prized possession. "My mom keeps your picture in her purse." Nathaniel's breath caught. He leaned in, taking the photograph carefully between his fingers. The edges were worn, as if it had been folded and unfolded countless times. It was an old image of him, perhaps from a newspaper or a company brochure. His younger self stood tall in a sharp navy blue suit, arms crossed, that same focused intensity in his gaze that had defined his entire career. But why would this boy's mother have it? Nathaniel looked back at the child. "Your mom keeps this?" he asked, his voice quieter now. The boy nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, she always has it. It's kind of wrinkly now, but she keeps it in a special pocket of her purse. I saw it a bunch of times." Nathaniel's mind whirled. Was it admiration? A past business connection? He met so many people, made so many deals. What if he had met her before and didn't remember? "What's your name, kid?" he asked gently. "Leo," the boy said proudly, standing up straighter. "Leo Bennett. And my mom's name is Clara." "Clara." Nathaniel let the name settle in his mind. It stirred nothing familiar, yet something about the boy's excitement, his sincerity, made Nathaniel's heart clench in a way he didn't expect. "Where's your mom now, Leo?" he asked, glancing around. Surely she wouldn't let her young son wander a busy park alone. Leo's face brightened, and he grabbed Nathaniel's hand without hesitation, pulling him toward a small cafe at the park's edge. "Come on, she's right over here. You can ask her yourself." Nathaniel let himself be led, his curiosity outweighing any of his usual reservations. The cafe was quaint, nestled between a bookstore and a florist, the kind of place with wooden chairs and the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee drifting into the open air. As they reached the entrance, Leo released Nathaniel's hand and dashed inside. "Mom! Mom!" he called excitedly. Nathaniel stepped in after him, his gaze scanning the room. And then he saw her. Behind the counter, wiping her hands on a flour-dusted apron, stood a woman with soft chestnut hair and warm, deep brown eyes. When she looked up at Leo, her face was lit with affection, until she followed his pointed finger and saw Nathaniel. Her smile froze. Her eyes widened. And in that moment, Nathaniel knew. She knew him. And somehow, in some way he had yet to understand. He had changed her life. Nathaniel Grant was no stranger to surprise. In the world of high-stakes business, unexpected deals, corporate betrayals, and market crashes were routine. But standing in the doorway of a small café, staring into the stunned eyes of Clara Bennett, he felt something he hadn't in years, a sense of the past catching up to him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them seemed to hum with unspoken words, memories he couldn't quite reach. Leo, completely unaware of the tension, grinned and waved his hands. "See, Mom? I told you. It's really him." Clara's fingers gripped the edge of the counter, her knuckles turning white. "Nathaniel Grant," she murmured, almost to herself. Nathaniel stepped forward cautiously. "You know me." It wasn't a question. The way she looked at him, with a mix of disbelief, nostalgia, and something else, she absolutely knew him. Clara let out a shaky breath, forcing a smile for Leo's sake. "Leo, sweetheart, why don't you go wash your hands? I'll get you a snack, okay?" Leo pouted. "But Mom, no buts, young man." She ruffled his hair gently, nudging him toward the restroom. 2 minutes. Leo groaned but obeyed, skipping toward the back. The moment he was out of sight, Clara turned back to Nathaniel, her expression shifting. "Why do you have my picture in your purse?" Nathaniel asked softly, cutting to the heart of it. Clara swallowed hard. For a moment, it looked like she might not answer. Then, she exhaled, shoulders slumping, and motioned toward a corner booth. "Come with me." Nathaniel followed, his usually sharp, calculating mind completely unprepared for what he was about to hear. Clara sat down across from him, pressing her hands together on the tabletop. Nathaniel watched as she seemed to gather herself, her deep brown eyes flickering with something raw, gratitude, pain, and something he couldn't yet name. "You don't remember me, do you?" she finally asked. Nathaniel hesitated. "No," he admitted, "but I feel like I should." Clara gave a small, sad smile. "It was a long time ago. And for you, I'm sure it was just another day. But for me," she trailed off, shaking her head. "For me, it was the day my life changed." Nathaniel leaned in slightly, something in his chest tightening. "Tell me." Clara exhaled slowly, looking down at her hands before speaking. 7 years ago, she began, I was at rock bottom. I had just lost my job. I was drowning in bills. And to make it worse, I was pregnant with Leo. She paused, her fingers trembling slightly. I had no family to turn to. My parents had passed, and my friends, well, they had their own lives. I was scared, really scared. Nathaniel listened intently, feeling a strange unease settle in his gut. I was sitting in a lobby that day. It was some corporate office. I don't even remember which one. I had applied for dozens of jobs, and that day I had another interview. But I was exhausted, emotionally drained. And then you walked in. Nathaniel's brow furrowed. "I did." She nodded. "You were on the phone, in a rush, like you always are." A tiny smile ghosted across her lips. "You didn't even look at me at first. But then, as you walked past, I guess you noticed me. You stopped. You asked me if I was okay." Nathaniel tried to dig through his memories, but nothing surfaced. "And what did you say?" Clara laughed softly. "I didn't want to tell you the truth. You were a billionaire, and I was just some pregnant woman sitting in a waiting room, trying to keep it together. But you didn't leave. You sat down next to me." Nathaniel's chest tightened. "And Clara's gaze softened. You didn't do anything dramatic. You didn't offer me a job or hand me a check. But you listened. You let me talk. You told me something I've never forgotten. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. What did I say? Clara's voice dropped to almost a whisper. You told me, sometimes the hardest storms bring the clearest skies. You're stronger than you know. Don't let this break you. Nathaniel's heart stopped. The words sounded like him, something he might say without thinking. But hearing them repeated back at him, realizing they had stayed with Clara for all these years, hit him in a way he wasn't prepared for. I don't even think you knew how much I needed to hear that, Clara continued, her voice thick with emotion. That moment, it gave me strength. It reminded me that I wasn't alone. And when I got up from that chair, I felt different. I walked into that interview with confidence, and I got the job. It wasn't much, but it was enough to start over. Nathaniel felt something unfamiliar stir inside him, a deep, unexpected emotion. Clara smiled, her eyes glistening. I kept your picture in my purse all these years because you were a symbol of hope for me. Whenever things got hard, I'd look at it and remind myself that I survived before. I could survive again. Nathaniel sat back, exhaling slowly. He had no memory of that day. To him, it had been nothing, a brief conversation, a passing moment. But to her, it had been everything. He cleared his throat, tried to push past the knot forming there. Clara, he hesitated, searching for the right words. But before he could say more, a small pair of feet rushed up behind them. Mom, look what I found. Leo's excited voice cut through the heavy moment as he held up a shiny coin he had picked up from the floor. It's my lucky penny now. Clara chuckled, wiping her eyes quickly before Leo could see. That's great, sweetheart. Nathaniel watched them. The warmth, the love, the unbreakable bond. And something in him shifted. He had spent his life building empires, making deals, chasing power. But in this tiny cafe, with a woman whose life he had unknowingly changed and a little boy who had no idea of the weight of this moment, Nathaniel felt something he hadn't in years. Something real. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking about his next meeting, his next deal, or his next billion. He was thinking about them, and he wasn't ready to walk away. Nathaniel Grant had spent his life negotiating billion-dollar deals, analyzing financial reports, and making decisions that shaped industries. He had sat across from world leaders, CEOs, and power players. Yet sitting across from Clara Bennett in this small cafe, he felt completely out of his depth. Her words echoed in his mind. You told me, sometimes the hardest storms bring the clearest skies. He had no memory of saying it, no recollection of the moment that had become a turning point in Clara's life. Yet here she was, telling him that a few simple words, a brief moment of kindness, had changed everything. Nathaniel let out a slow breath, his fingers lightly tapping against the edge of the wooden table. Clara, he started, his voice quieter than usual. I don't know what to say. Clara gave a soft, knowing smile. I'm not surprised you don't remember. To you, it was just a conversation. But to me, it was hope. Nathaniel leaned forward slightly. I want to understand, he said sincerely. Not just the words I said, but how that moment led you here. Clara nodded, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup as she gathered her thoughts. I told you I got the job that day, she began. It wasn't glamorous, just a front desk receptionist position at a mid-sized company. But it meant I could start over. I worked long hours, barely made ends meet, but at least I had something. And when Leo was born, she glanced toward the back of the cafe, where Leo was now giggling with one of the other waitresses. I promised myself I'd give him everything I never had. Nathaniel watched her carefully. You raise him alone? She nodded. His father left the moment he found out I was pregnant. Said he wasn't ready to be a dad, packed his bags, and never looked back. There was no bitterness in her voice, just a quiet strength that Nathaniel deeply respected. You must have struggled, he said, more to himself than to her. Clara gave a soft chuckle. That's an understatement. There were days I had to choose between rent and groceries. Nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I'd made a mistake bringing Leo into a world where I had nothing to give him. Her voice wavered slightly, but every time things got hard, I'd pull out that picture of you, the one from the newspaper article I found that day, and I'd remind myself of what you told me. Nathaniel's throat tightened. You really held on to that. I did, Clara admitted. Not because I was obsessed with you or anything. She laughed lightly, shaking her head. But because you represented something bigger. You were proof that a person could rise from nothing and build an empire. That meant something to me. Nathaniel swallowed hard. Something deep inside him, stirring in a way he couldn't quite name. She continued, so I worked my way up. After a couple of years, I landed a better job in HR. The pay was still tight, but at least Leo had a stable home. And then, she hesitated, biting her lip. Nathaniel caught the hesitation. And then what? Clara exhaled. Then the company hit financial trouble. They started laying people off. I was one of them. A flash of guilt hit Nathaniel. Not because he had caused it, but because he understood all too well how ruthless the business world could be. What did you do? He asked gently. Clara shrugged. At first, I panicked. I had no savings, no backup plan. But then, she smiled faintly. I remembered you. I remembered that people like you didn't give up. So I picked myself up, found whatever work I could, and eventually I landed here. It's not much, but it pays the bills. It keeps a roof over our heads. And Leo, she looked toward her son again, pride shining in her eyes. Leo is happy. That's all that matters. Nathaniel sat back in his chair, absorbing everything she had just told him. She had been drowning, standing on the edge of despair, and yet she had never given up. She had fought, struggled, and survived. And through it all, she had held onto a memory of him. Not because he had given her money, not because he had given her a job, but because he had believed in her, even if just for a moment. Nathaniel felt something unfamiliar lodge itself in his chest. A strange ache, a quiet kind of admiration he hadn't expected. After a long pause, he finally spoke. I don't deserve the credit for your strength, Clara. You did that on your own. Clara smiled softly. Maybe, but sometimes we just need one person to remind us that we're capable of more than we think. Nathaniel ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. I don't think I've ever stopped to wonder about the people I might have impacted. I've spent so many years chasing the next goal, the next deal. I never looked back. He looked at her, his piercing blue eyes filled with something softer now. But hearing this, it makes me realize that maybe the smallest things we do matter more than we ever know. Clara nodded. They do. Just then, Leo came bounding back to the table, his face full of excitement. "Mom, guess what? Jenny gave me a cookie for helping her clean up the napkins." He held up a slightly crumbled chocolate chip cookie like it was a treasure. Clara laughed, ruffling his hair. "That was very kind of her. And of you." Leo turned to Nathaniel. "Hey, Mr. Grant, do you like cookies?" Nathaniel, who hadn't eaten anything remotely unhealthy in years, found himself chuckling. "I think I do today." Leo beamed and broke his cookie in half, offering one piece to Nathaniel. Nathaniel stared at the small, messy hand holding out a simple, crumbled cookie. He had signed billion-dollar contracts, bought companies, changed entire industries. And yet, this moment, this small, kind gesture felt more profound than anything else in his life. He took the cookie with a smile. "Thank you, Leo." The boy grinned. "You're welcome." As Nathaniel took a bite, feeling the warmth of something unfamiliar yet deeply comforting settle in his chest, he realized something. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about business. He wasn't thinking about profits, losses, or stockholders. He was thinking about them, and he wasn't sure he wanted to leave. Nathaniel sat in the warm café, the laughter of a child filling the space around him. It was strange. He wasn't used to sitting still. His life had always been about motion, about the next step, the next deal, the next achievement. But in this moment, as he looked at Clara and Leo, he felt something he hadn't in years. Something real. Clara smiled softly at Leo as he happily munched on the rest of his cookie. Her eyes held the quiet strength of someone who had fought battles no one had seen, a woman who had built a life from nothing, piece by piece. Nathaniel had spent years chasing power, success, and wealth. But what had it all meant if, in the end, he had no one to share it with? He had built an empire, but Clara had built a home. And somehow, it was her victory that felt greater. Nathaniel placed his coffee down and looked at Clara. "You've been through so much." His voice was lower now, more thoughtful. "You built this life on your own, but you shouldn't have had to struggle so hard." Clara shook her head with a soft chuckle. "Life doesn't always go the way we expect." "No," Nathaniel agreed. "But sometimes it gives us a second chance." Clara tilted her head slightly, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "What do you mean?" Nathaniel exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I've spent my life believing success was measured in numbers, deals, and power. But I think I've been looking at it the wrong way." He glanced toward Leo, who was playing with the sugar packets on the table, humming to himself. "What if success is about the lives we change instead?" Clara studied him carefully. "What are you saying, Nathaniel?" He met her gaze, his voice steady. "I want to help." Clara's brow furrowed. "Nathaniel, I didn't tell you my story to ask for anything. I told you because I know." Nathaniel interrupted gently. "I know you didn't, but that's exactly why I want to do this." Clara hesitated, uncertainty flickering in her expression. "What do you mean by help?" Nathaniel thought for a moment before answering. He didn't want to throw money at the situation. He knew Clara was too proud for that, and honestly, it wasn't what she needed. She didn't need saving. She needed opportunity. "I read people for a living, Clara," he said finally. "And I can see it. You're meant for more than this. You're smart, resilient, hardworking. What if I could help you get back on your feet in a way that doesn't feel like charity?" Clara frowned slightly. "I don't want handouts." Nathaniel nodded. "I wouldn't insult you with one. But what if I told you that my company, one of my foundations, could use someone like you? Someone who understands struggle, who knows how to help others rise. Would you consider it? Clara's lips parted slightly, but she didn't speak right away. A job offer? Not a gift, not a favor, but a real opportunity? She swallowed. I don't know what to say. Nathaniel smiled. Say you'll think about it. Clara glanced at Leo, who was now making a tiny tower out of sugar packets, his face full of quiet determination. Her son deserved a better life, a stable home, a future where she didn't have to work endless hours just to keep the lights on. But more than that, she wanted this. She had fought alone for so long. Maybe it was time to accept a helping hand that wasn't pity, but respect. Finally, she looked up at Nathaniel and nodded. Okay, I'll think about it. Nathaniel exhaled, a small smile tugging at his lips. But there was one more thing he hadn't said. He turned to Leo. And as for you, young man, Leo looked up, grinning. Me? Nathaniel chuckled. Yeah, you. You know, I've met a lot of smart people in my life, but I think you might be one of the smartest. Leo beamed. Really? Really? Nathaniel said. And smart kids need people who believe in them. How would you feel about me being your mentor? Leo's eyes lit up. Like a superhero mentor. Nathaniel laughed. Something like that. Leo practically bounced in his seat. That would be so cool. Nathaniel looked at Clara, waiting for her reaction. She blinked, clearly overwhelmed. But slowly, a tearful smile spread across her lips. Leo's never really had anyone to look up to, she admitted quietly. Someone who saw potential in him. Nathaniel's voice softened. He does now. Leo giggled excitedly, completely unaware of the magnitude of what had just happened. Nathaniel had come to the cafe as a stranger. He was leaving as something more. As the afternoon light streamed through the cafe window, Nathaniel realized something profound. 7 years ago, he had changed Clara's life without even knowing it. Today, she had changed his. Maybe that was the beauty of life. The small kindnesses, the unexpected connections, the way one moment could ripple outward in ways we never imagined. Nathaniel reached into his pocket, pulling out a sleek business card. He placed it on the table and slid it toward Clara. Take your time, he said. But whatever you decide, know that this door will always be open for you and Leo. Clara picked up the card carefully, running her fingers over the raised print. She exhaled, her smile warm, her eyes bright. Thank you, Nathaniel, she whispered. And for the first time in a long time, Nathaniel Grant, the billionaire who had everything, felt like he had just gained something more valuable than all the wealth in the world. He had gained a new beginning,